The first time I ever got drunk with the intent of getting drunk, I was 9 years old, and I blacked
Okay.
out for the first time when I was 11, and then I pretty much drank, alcoholically like that until I stopped drinking. I abused drugs in the same way, same way. Everything was in excess. In excess is what do if somebody said, "What do you want?" I would say, "What do you got?" And it was more like, "How much do you want? How much do you have?" My addiction is more. That's it. That like fill in the blanks. Whatever you want to fill in there that takes me out of myself, I will take. That was the way I was.
Carry the hurt when it gets too hard. Pick it up, dust it off, and I
Okay, so
fall
you've
down.
been sober for 17 years.
Yes, which
What
is a shock.
right? I mean, 17 years. So I assume you were maybe in your late 20s?
I was 33 when I got sober. So I
Okay.
actually just celebrated my 50th birthday in January. Um, so I
50.
have had, yeah, I just turned 50 in January.
I would
Yep.
have never guessed.
Thank you. I appreciate that. When some people say like, "So you've been 17 years sober?" I'm like, "Yeah, I got sober when I was 9." So that's actually when I started drinking. I had the first time I ever got drunk with the intent of getting drunk. I was 9 years old, and I blacked
Okay.
out for the first time when I was 11, and then I pretty much drank alcoholically like that until I stopped drinking. When I was 33, and I abused drugs in the same way. Same way. Everything was in excess. In excess is what do if somebody said, "What do you want?" I would say, "What do you got?" And it was more like, "How much do you want? How much do you have?" Like everything was always more. I like to say to people, my addiction is more. That's it. That like fill in the blanks. Whatever you want to fill in there that takes me out of myself, I will take. That was the way I was. And I wanted is and once I started to feel it, I just want more and more and more, And
So
it's a bad place to be.
you have an addictive personality, like
Yes. Yes.
legit.
Yeah, like and that like and if you look at it scientifically for a long time, I think people used to say like, well, my father was an alcoholic and my grandfather's an alcoholic and it's genetic. But they have proven now there's like really no DNA markers that are like specific to like alcoholism or, they want to call it nowadays like AUD, like, whatever you want to call it, but then it used to be like towards alcoholism. But they have proven that there are genetic markers to be like predisposed to addictive personality. So I've got that. Like that is what I have. Like, I am an equal opportunity offender. Like I do not discriminate. If it takes me outside of myself, I would be all in.
So, I like how you say predisposed to addictive behavior or, because I think that's the part that is the problem, like, you have an addictive personality and maybe it runs in your family, but you're non-alcoholic because it runs in your family. And
No,
I can that's very controversial, and I know that, but I mean,
I'm all about controversy when it comes to that stuff. Like I have no problem saying like alcohol and drugs are not my problem. They are not my problem. Like, like everybody used to say that, like, Mike's got a pretty good life, why doesn't he just stop? And I could. Like I can stop. I can't stay stopped. Because when the uncomfortability inside of me can like, shows back up, that was my solution. So I like to look at it from the standpoint of I say this all the time. I can put the drink down. I can put the drugs down. Now, if that's my problem, the further away I get from it, the better I should feel. But
mm.
that's not the case for someone like me. For someone like me, the further away I get from a drink, the faster the spinning is in my head and the tighter the knot is in my stomach. So, why? Because for me, I'm walking around with untreated alcoholism or untreated addiction. Because if you give me something that takes me out of right here and right now from that uncomfortable feeling, I'll take it. I will take it. And I can do that in sobriety, in 17 years of sobriety. I can still do that with other things. I got back into snowboarding. And when I got back into snowboarding after being off the mountain for 20 years, I bought 3 setups, not 1, 3. I bought 3 snowboards, 3 and I was all in. Why? Because and I love it. I do love it. I missed it a lot. But it's that kind of behavior that I need to be aware of. It's not the external thing. When I'm in addiction, I'm taking an external source to fix an internal condition. And that internal condition just shows up for me as uncomfortability and a lot of fucking noise in my head.
Right. I mean, 17 years sober, so you've definitely seen y like, now there's, like, this, movement for sobriety. When you quit, there probably wasn't. So how did like, what steps did you take to start your journey?
So for me, problems like showed up early on in my life, like with drinking, right? Drinking was fun. It was fun with problems, and then it was just problems. Like it was causing, I can tell people, um, I've woken up in jail cells. I've woken up handcuffed to hospital beds. I've woken up in places where I had no idea where I was. I've woken up in towns where I didn't know how I got there, after a night out, not having any idea how I got there, and then I would find my way back home or to where I started. Um, so those kinds of things start piling up, DWI, loss of jobs, like these things start piling up, and it's like you need to do something. So I had family members that had gone to AA, and they were like, I think you should do this. And I'm like, there's no way I'm going there because I know that you people talk about God there, and there's no way that I'm going there. At a very young age, I kind of turned my back on like any sort of God. I just firmly believed for the longest time in my life, I'm going to live my life to the fullest. When I die, stick me in the ground, bury me. I'll become worm food, whatever it is. But this is it. Like, this is it. We get one go around at this, excuse me, and I'm done. And that's it. So I was very, very opposed to the idea of going to this program, even though I knew that it had worked for these individuals in my family. Like I had an aunt and another person that I knew very well that I know that it worked for them. I'm like, but that's great. It can work for you because you believe in God and I don't. So it kept me away. And and then there came a point in my life where, my life is burning to the ground. I was married at the time. I had, 3 young children. They were at the time my kids were, um, 4, 7, and 10. So my kids were young, and, I had a business that was kind of like, burning to the ground at the time because of my drinking and because of my behaviors, and I needed to do something, but I wasn't willing to do that. So then in therapy, I basically was like, fine, I will go to an AA meeting. And I was like, I'll go tomorrow. And my therapist, our therapist, kind of reached behind her and grabbed a pamphlet, and she's like, well, there's actually a meeting tonight over at the brick church if you'd like to go. So I'm like, you know what? Just to prove these people wrong, I'll go to your fucking meeting. I'll go. And because I knew the church, it's the church that I left when I was a kid, like at 10 years old, I'm like, I was kind of asked like it would be better if Michael didn't come back type thing because of some things that happened, which I didn't think were my fault. But yeah, so I pretty much stopped going to church completely like once I was 10. Um but I knew where that church was, so I was like, fine, I'll go. And I went. And some very profound things happened at that very first meeting I'd ever been to. Extremely profound. Um, but it didn't keep me, right? Like it didn't get me sober. I kind of just for the next year, that was in 2007, and for the next year, well, actually, let me back up a little. After that, I went to a doctor. I actually told him a little bit of truth. I said, I think I might have a problem with drinking because any other time I had been to the doctor, my mom and dad wanted me to see a therapist when they were getting their divorce. I was a teenager. And it was kind of like they were worried about like my drinking and my behavior. So in my meeting with that therapist, after about a 45-minute to an hour session, I had the therapist firmly believing that I was not the problem. They were the problem. And he sent me on my merry way because I didn't tell him the truth. I didn't tell him the truth. Right. I kind of just lied my way through it. And I didn't have to go back to that therapist. So fast forward, quite a few years later.
Hold on, sorry. They wanted to blame it on it was easier to blame it on your parents?
Yeah, yeah, yeah. So the therapist was
Okay.
totally like, "I don't think you're the problem here. I think that, I think you have every right to feel the way that you do, and I think you're doing just fine." I'm like, "Thank you. See you later." You know? But at the time, I was already drinking way more than I should have. Way more. Like if I look back at my drinking behaviors, like I said, I blacked out with, I drank for the first time with the intent of getting drunk at 9. I had had my first sips of alcohol well before that, and I was restless, irritable, and discontent far before I ever picked up a first drink. Having that first drink really made it like, ooh, this is pretty good. Then I vomited profusely. And then by 11 years old, I blacked out. And then, like, I drank that way, and a lot of times I did well in school, played varsity sports, popular amongst my peers, all that stuff. But I drank heavily on the weekends. Like I drank on the weekends. And then by the time I was like, actually, I can't even say by the time I was a junior or senior. There was plenty of times when I was a freshman because a lot of my friends were older, skipping out of school, getting drunk, going back to school drunk, and then kind of just doing that throughout high school. And then by 11th or 12th grade, drinking kind of really took on a whole new life, and then so when my parents divorced, they wanted me to speak to somebody, so I did. I went to the counselor. I went to a therapist. I think one of them happened to be seen through the divorce process, and so they knew a little bit about me. And like I said, like I told them whatever I needed to tell them, and I walked out, and I wasn't the problem. So they said, that I wasn't the problem. So I just went on, carried on doing what I was doing. And then a lot of things happened from that point forward, run-ins with the police, nights in jail, like I said, a lot of just problems. And by the time I got, it was 2007 when I went to my first AA meeting. And then I went to my doctor. I went to like my primary care physician, and I kind of told them what was going on. And upon his recommendation, he said, "Why don't you try antabuse?" So I was like,
Mm.
okay. And he was like, if you take this stuff, you'll never want to drink again. There's no way. You'll be so sick. You'll never, you will not want to experience that. So you won't drink. Well, lo and behold, it didn't make me as sick drinking, taking antabuse as some of the times I had been sick prior to that. So it didn't keep me from drinking. So for
Oh.
about 1 year, I I went to a few AA meetings. I didn't talk to anybody. I didn't let anybody know really what was going on in my life. Um, and after a year of doing that, I wanted to kill myself, and that's the God's honest truth. Like I wanted to die. I contemplated the fact that these people's lives would be a whole lot better if I wasn't in it, and if that's not the most selfish thing in the world to think, that I could leave 3 young kids behind without their father at a young age and say, "Hey, I think your lives will be better without me." That's kind of the place where it took me, and I was out of the house at the time. I was staying at my mom's. I was told you can't be here, and I went to my mom's house and I kind of told her the way I felt, and she was scared shitless. She was really, really concerned. And she said, "You need to do something. Like, you need help. Will you be willing? Would you be willing to go to rehab?" And I never really contemplated that before. I was just like, you know what? I will. I'll go. So for the next like 10 days, yeah, like 8 to 10 days, I was, at my mom's, and I'm searching online for like rehabs and stuff, and I found some beautiful places. Beautiful. Lovely places down on the beach, places that had pools and spas and all this stuff. And my mom's trying to get me into a rehab. And about 8 or 9 days later, um, she told me, like, she actually was running into a lot of problems. A lot of beds were filled, and she reached out
Mm.
to our state legislator, and he actually was able to get me in somewhere. And lo and behold, this was not like the places that I was looking at online. It was not. It was the third floor of a state hospital. It was an integrated MICA unit. So I mean, it's a conglomeration, everybody is mixed together, whether you have addictions or, mental disorders, like we're all together on this floor. And my first thought when I got there and I woke up in the morning, I was like, this place is not for me. Like I do not want to be here. Maybe I'm overreacting a little bit. Maybe we should pump the brakes a little bit. Maybe I shouldn't be here. That's kind of where I was at. And like that's kind of where, it took me. That is where my recovery journey began, because it was literally like a year later, almost to the date that I started taking antabuse to the day that I was taken to rehab. So in
Oh,
2008, I was admitted to rehab in 2008, February of 2008. Um, and then some very crazy things happened there, which changed the trajectory of my life.
crazy things as in
So, like I said, it was not the place I wanted to be whatsoever. For the first couple days that I was there. So let me back up real quick. On the drive to rehab, I'm really thinking to myself, like, maybe we're overreacting. Like, maybe I don't really need to go do this. This seems very extreme. Maybe just a few more weeks at my mom's house, I'll get this thing under control. Uh, Mind you, every night that my mom went to bed, as soon as she went to bed, I would crack o I'm in the refrigerator drinking until I passed out. And this is while this is that is where I'm told to leave my home, which rightly so, told to get out of the house, you can't be here, for my drinking, and, here I am at my mom's, and I need to do something, and I'm drinking every night after she goes to bed, because I don't want them to know that I'm doing that, right? I don't want, I'm trying to get better. I'm trying to get better.
you're
So,
hiding it.
oh, 100%. I hid it for a long time, prior to that. Like tons of hiding it type stuff. Um, so then on the way to rehab, I'm sitting in the car and it's snowing. And it's like snowing pretty bad. And we're on the highway. And I'm thinking to myself, okay, if I just jump out of this car and hopefully get hit by a tractor trailer, this could all be over. Like we can commit to where I was at prior to saying I would go to rehab. And then I started thinking to myself, like, man, my mom, I love my mom. I love my mom dearly. And I think that would really have a really poor effect on her life, if she saw her son jump from the car. So I'm like, all right, maybe I can, and then next thing you know, we're there, and that because I was also thinking, like, the car's going a little too slow. She's driving very slow because of the snow. I'm probably not going to die. It's just going to be really bad. So I made it to the rehab, and then sitting waiting to get checked in. It was a couple hours that we had to sit in the waiting room until they brought me into the back. So they bring me into the back, and there was a guy um in the waiting room, and he was waiting to get his son seen for something completely different. And I guess he had asked my mom, like, oh, why are you here? And then I kind of like said hello, and I was like, I'm waiting to get into the rehab. And he's like, oh. So he asked like the lady at the desk, he's like, do they talk about God up there? And she's like, well, it is kind of like a 12-step type program. And he's like, well, they should, because that's what these people need a little bit of God in their life. So I'm like, oh, great, here we go. So I yeah, so I get into the back, and I finally get brought in, and I start getting my intake from the nurse. So it was a male nurse, and I'll never forget it, because he starts doing he's checking my vitals. I do a piss test. He's drawing blood. He's doing all these things. And he asks me, he goes, when is the last time that you drank or used? And I said, probably a couple days ago. He goes, let me ask you again, when is the last time that you drank or used? And I said, this morning. And he said, there you go. For once in your life, try to be honest. You are
Ooh.
here. You have a shot at this. Don't fucking waste it. And I was like, okay. So that was like really the first time, like with a medical professional, that I was being very honest that, yeah, I drank this morning. You're right. And then we get all checked in, and I kind of like the guy. He's super, super like easygoing. He's just talking to me like a normal human being. And we're on the elevator going up to the floor. And I was like, do you have any words of advice? And he said, yeah. He said, remember why you're here. He goes, do not get involved in the bullshit that goes on in there because there is a lot of drama. He goes, if you remember why you're here, focus on your being here and get everything that you possibly can out of it while you're here. So I was like, okay. And then it was late, so everybody was already in bed. They hands me over to the nurses at the station, and then they showed me to my room. So I'm sitting in my room for about like maybe 15, 20 minutes, and there's a knock on the door, and it's a priest. I'm like, of all people, like who seriously? And he's like, do you mind if I talk to you for a little while? I'm like, sure.
Hey guys, I hope that you're enjoying this podcast. Welcome to Nicow Coffee. We are overcoming addiction. This is locally roasted here in Boise, Idaho. I ship it out. It is organic and chemical free. We got a decaf, which is 0 proof decaf. We have a blackout free espresso. We got a no regrets medium, and we got a fresh start medium dark. I hope you guys will check it out in the description below.
And he was very kind also. You
Starting
know,
with that honesty.
yeah, and he was very kind also. He wasn't like, he wasn't asking me like my religion or anything. He was just an open book person to talk to. He was just like, wanted me to feel kind of comfortable, see where my head was at. And then I went to bed that night. Probably cried myself to sleep. And then I woke up in the morning and I went down to like the main meeting room and I was like, wow, this place fucking sucks. This is not what I signed up for. I'm like, and so I instantly had this like pushback against the place.
Bad attitude.
Very much so, but then after like a day or so, like, first day I'm in there, the guy that comes in to, run the meeting, there were 22 or 23 of us in there at the time, like my first day there. And he's like, hey, I want all of you to take a look around. One or two of you might stay sober when you leave here. I'm like, holy shit, those aren't very good odds. One or two of us.
Wow.
Okay, this is looking great, like, all right. But I am a kind of person that likes to prove other people wrong. So I'm like, okay, maybe that could
Same.
be me. Maybe that'll be me, So I did listen when I was in these, like, in the sessions for the first time in my life. I'm like really like about alcoholism and addiction. I'm really paying attention to the stuff that's going on. And what it gave me was a clear understanding of what it is that I might have. Right? I'm not crazy. Here I thought for the longest time that everybody had suicidal ideations and wanted to kill themselves, but not everybody does. Not everybody feels that way, especially when you have a life on the outside that looks pretty promising to people. Not everybody feels that way. So I had to kind of come to grips with that. Like I need to, these are not normal feelings and thoughts. But I learned a lot about alcoholism and addiction while I was there, because back then they hadn't changed it over to, alcohol use disorder yet. It was still alcoholism and addiction. So
Somebody on my TikTok was like, they were not happy with me saying AUD. They were like, say it how it is.
it's
Like,
for, you know what I mean? And honestly, like I took the test, like now that's like used in the medical profession, and I suffer from, I am severely likely to develop what do they call it? How do they put it? A dependence upon alcohol. Like, so I'm on that scale too. If anything, the AUD scale just puts more people into the spectrum of, you might want to take a look at your relationship with alcohol. That's really all that does. I think like the term alcoholic or alcoholism was a big stigma for a long time. It kept me from being able to say I'm an alcoholic. I have no problem saying it today because once I start, I don't know where it ends. And when I'm not drinking, I'm thinking about drinking. To me, that's all an alcoholic is. Like, that's it. Once you start, you have no idea where it's going to end. And when you're not drinking, you're thinking about drinking. That's it. It's pretty simple. And if you put it on an AUD scale, and if I answer the questions honestly, there's the key term there. You must answer those questions honestly. If I answer them honestly, dude, I'm off the rocker. Like I'm beyond. So like, if it's a very good, I think it's a good test for people to take a look at. Anybody just to take a look at it. Like, oh, I don't drink that much. Like, oh, how often do you drink? 3-4 beers maybe a night. Like, okay. And for what reason are you drinking those 3 or 4 beers a night? And it may not be like, listen, you may not be an alcoholic just because you drink 3 or 4 beers a night. Like, that might just be where you start to feel it and you're like, "Oh, I don't want any more." For me, as soon as I start to feel it, I hit the gas because I don't it's now I'm ready to go. It has nothing to do with like for me, I like the effect produced by alcohol and then I take it to an extreme. There's no off switch when it comes to me.
Same.
So there's no off switch. And like, and that's, my off switch is broken. Like once I turn it on, like we're all in. Don't know where I'm going to end up. Don't know how this night's going to go. Things may look very, very promising for a little while. And the people that I'm with might be like, man, you were having such a great time. What happened? 5 minutes later, you were like some kind of like you were out of your mind. Like that's that's my experience with alcohol. You
That's
know,
mine as well.
yeah, so I can say like, like it doesn't, alcohol doesn't serve me well, and it definitely doesn't serve the people around me well either. So it's not just me, it affects them, and I had to understand that. And that's where the profound thing in rehab happened to me because for the next 3 or 4 days, I'm going to all the sessions. I'm doing the thing. I'm being studious. I'm kind of starting to get pissed off because I'm supposed to have a meeting with the psychotherapist there. And it's been, pushed back, pushed back. I was supposed to meet with them like the second day I was there. I didn't have that meeting. I'm on the phone with my mom, like basically every day saying, this place sucks. You got to get me to a different place. They're not hearing what I'm saying. I haven't even seen my psychotherapist, the psychologist yet. And so she was like, okay, okay. She wanted to help. She did. She wanted to help. If what I'm telling her is the truth and I'm not getting the help that I need or that I'm promised, then she wants to get me somewhere where I can. She got me into this, they got me into this rehab because it was the only bed that was available as quick as possible. So after like on my fourth day, I think it was my fourth day there, I had my meeting with the 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 psychologist. So within 40 to 45 minutes, I'm now mind you, I'm uncomfortable there. I'm suffering from like just my head is spinning. I don't have my solution to take away this spinning. I'm
Mhm.
sitting with a bunch of other people that are rocking in their chairs also. And the psychologist asked me, he's like, have you ever suffered from, anxiety or depression? So I'm like, yeah, I feel pretty anxious. I'm pretty depressed right now. I don't want to be here. This place sucks. So he gave me a script. He wrote me 2 scripts, one prescription for anxiety and one prescription for depression. And he sent me out of the office. Now, there was a man waiting outside that door. And that man, his name is Tony, and he was a member of AA, and he came into the rehab like on a daily basis, kind of sat in on meetings, just talked to people that were there. And he asked me, he said, how did your meeting go? And I said, great. And he's like, well, that's good. And I said, he gave me a prescription for anxiety and one for depression. And I'm beelining it. I am going to the nurse's station. I'm getting my meds and I'm going to feel better. That is what is going on in my head. I'm going to take something that's going to make me not feel. So Tony was just like, can I ask you a question? And I'm like, yeah. He goes, have you ever been diagnosed with anxiety or depression? And I'm like, no. And he's like, I'm not saying that you are not feeling anxious or a little depressed right now. And I am not saying that you may not suffer from anxiety and depression. But is it possible that you are feeling this way right now because you're 4 days, 5 days removed from the life that you know? You have not had you have had no alcohol and no drugs for 4 or 5 days, and you are twisted up inside. Is it possible that maybe once you kind of work through this, you may not feel that anxiety and depression that you're feeling right now? Maybe you could give it a little time, but if you fill that script now, you're not going to feel what you're feeling right now. Maybe you need to feel the feelings that you're feeling. And I took his advice and I did not fill those scripts. The next day, it was February 17th, and it was the day before my youngest son's 5th birthday. So I'm on the phone with my 4-year-old son, and I always like I'm on the phone with my son. He's like, "Hey, dad," and I'm like, "Hey, bud," and he's like, "You're gonna be at my birthday party tomorrow, right, dad?" And I'm like, "I don't know, bud."
Um,
My kids thought I was working. They had no idea where I was. So he's like, "No, no, 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 dad. You know where my party's at. I'll see you tomorrow. I'll see you at my party tomorrow." And I got off the phone and I went into my room and I was broken. Like that phone call broke me. For the very first time in my life, I realized that my drinking and my behaviors were not only affecting me, but they were having a direct effect on the people that I loved most
yeah.
in the world. And this is a completely innocent human being that I love more than anything in the world. What I am doing is hurting him. And I walked into my room and I hit my knees. I was not a God-fearing man, but in the rooms of AA, tiptoeing around the rooms for about a year, they read something there called How It Works. And at the end of that, it always says, God could and would if he were sought. And I had nowhere else to turn but up. I was out of answers. I hit my knees and I was bawling. And every wrong I had ever done, and ever, it seemed in my life. Every person I had hurt, every person that hurt me just came out and it was out loud. I was speaking this into the universe. And the last thing that I said was, if you are whatever you are, because I'm praying to a God I do not understand, like, nor do I know if it exists. All I know is I'm out of options. And I said, if you help me, I will do everything that I possibly can to stay sober.
Wow.
And for the first time in a very long time, I felt okay. I felt
That I have like
okay.
goosebumps. Oh my gosh.
I stood up and I felt okay. The tears dried up, and then lo and behold, there's a knock on the door, and it's the nurse, and she says, "You have a phone call. It's your mom." So I'm like, "Okay." So I go to I and it's at the nurse's station. Now, normally, like, you have certain times that the phone is allowed to be used. That's the way it was where I was. The phone is allowed to be used at a certain time. People get in line, they use the pay phone during their time. People are just standing there waiting to use the phone. But my mom had called the nurse's station. So I they let me use the phone at the nurse station. I said, "Hey, mom." And she's like, "Hey, I got you a bed at another facility." And I'm like, "Mom, I'm not going anywhere." She's like, "What?" I said, "I cannot explain to you why." I was like, "But I am staying right here. This is exactly where I think I'm supposed to be right now." She's like, "Are you okay?" I said, "Yes. I cannot explain why I feel this way right now, but this is where I need to be." And that kind of was like really the start of that was the big, big, big start of, like, any sort of belief in something greater than me. Like, alls I know is I felt a certain way one moment, and the very next moment, I didn't feel that way anymore. And I felt safe and protected. That is how I felt. That's the best way I can put it. I just felt safe and protected that no matter how this turns out, things are going to be okay. And fast forward a few more days, I was told that my insurance would only cover 10 days of rehab. So
Mm.
here I am trying my best to, like, do this thing. And then they come to me and I had a meeting with the care providers and stuff. And they were like, "So the insurance, like, you can stay, we can possibly work out, like, we can bill it. Um, or what you can do," and this is the fucking craziest thing I'd ever heard in my life at the time. They're like, "What you can do is you can leave after your 10 days and then you can go to IOP, intensive outpatient. And if you fail your piss test, then you can come back for the 28-day program." I'm like, are you fucking like, am I hearing what you're
What?
saying? You're saying that I'm here now and I'm willing to I want to do this program. This is my first trip around this is the first time I went to rehab. Now, I've got people in rehab, like my bunkie, my roommate, like he been to rehab 11 times, you know? This is my first time, and they literally said the way that the way that it works is like if you leave and you go to IOP, you have to sign up for IOP. And then if you fail your piss test, now you've seen that now they can prove that you have failed on outpatient, then they can send you back for inpatient. I'm like, wow, that is bizarre. But it didn't work. Like I ended up leaving after the 10 days and I went home and it was snowing really, really bad the next day, like storm. I think we got like 16, maybe 18 inches of snow. So I didn't leave the house all day. Like I got picked up on a Friday night. I was home all day Saturday. I shoveled pretty much all day Saturday. Um, and then on Sunday, I went to I looked in a book, like a meetings book, and I saw that there was an AA meeting at a place like in the afternoon. So I had said to, my wife at the time, I was like, there's a meeting at like 3 o'clock at this church and it's a couple towns over. Maybe I could go to that and then that way I'm home and I can hang out with the kids and stuff, afterwards. And she was like, yeah, great, go. So I went to this meeting and for people that don't know, it was a speaker meeting, which means that just one person speaks the entire time during the meeting. There's no open sharing. Nobody goes around the room. So it's just one person speaks. And then the meeting gets over and this guy, I'm leaving. I'm beelining it for the door. Like, I just want to leave. I want to go home. And this guy approaches me at the door. He kind of stops me at the door and he says, why are you here? And I was like, I don't want to drink anymore. He's like, no, no, no. Why are you here? He's like, court, wife, relate. Why are you here? And I said, oh, I just got out of rehab on Friday. I said, and I I don't want to drink anymore. So then he hands me a book. He hands me a book and he says, I want you to read this. And he points to it. So I read where his finger is pointed, and it says, if when you honestly want to, you find you cannot quit entirely, or if when drinking you have little control over the amount you take, you are probably alcoholic. And then he closes the book, and I'm like, that's me. That is me. That describes me to a fucking T. So I was like, I said, yeah, that's me. And so he's like, you got a little time? Do you want to talk? And I'm like, sure. So we go out and we sit on the steps of the church. And we just start talking, and we're talking for a little bit. And I was like, you from the area and stuff. He's like, no, I kind of grew up in the area. And he's like, I just happen to be, he's like, I live in the city now. He's like, I'm just up here this weekend helping my dad move out of his house into like assisted living. So I'm like, oh, so he's like, I had a little time in the afternoon. We got done a little early. Figured I'd hit a meeting. He's like, and then I was like, oh, so then he was like, I'm going to another meeting tonight with a bunch of people that I know, a bunch of friends, and it's in another town, kind of a little far away. He's like, if you're not busy, maybe you want to come meet some of those people. So I go home and I'm like kind of excited. I'm like, hey, I met this guy. He's like, he invited me to another meeting tonight. And my ex-wife, she was like, well, yeah, why don't you go? So I went and I was surrounded by some really great people. And that guy met me there. And we were talking, and these people are like laughing and they seemed like their shit was together and they're sharing stories that like the dumpster fires that their life was also, and I'm sharing with them like what just happened to me. And I think one of the coolest things is like, that man, I was kind of telling them that story about, what happened in the rehab after that phone conversation with my son. And this one guy literally said the exact same thing that you did. He goes, whew, man, that's what I love, man. I get the God bumps when people talk like that. So I'm like, okay. So he was like, and my friend Mark, he basically, I call him my friend now. At the time, he was just this guy that I looked like at him like he walked on water, like it was like crazy. He says, that experience that you had, he goes, that is yours. That is your experience. He goes, and it is a beautiful experience. And I want you to remember that experience for the rest of your life. He goes, because that is a pivotal moment in your life. And I say that all the time. We all have these pivotal moments. We have these windows of opportunity where we can make change happen in our lives. Now we can
Mhm.
either brush them away or we can like lean into them and say, this is it. This is your moment. What are you going to do with it? And he said, like, that experience you had, it's kind of like it is yours. And for you, it was probably extremely profound, which it was. He goes, now, when you explain that to some people, it's almost like if you were to go to Niagara Falls and you're standing in front of the falls, and I mean, it's incredible. The mist is hitting the roar of it. I mean, the mist is pushing up on you. He goes, it's just incredible. Now, I want you to take that experience and I want you to go back to some people and show them a glass of water and expect them to have the same experience that you did. It doesn't happen. It's
No.
your experience. And people, like, that's the thing that I've seen in 17 years. I have heard tremendous experiences like that where people were one way and then the next minute they were not. Their experience is their experience. My experience, like, I can't feel what they felt at the time, but I can get bumps. I can be like, "Ooh, that reminds
Yeah.
me of something that happened to me too," and like those experiences are available to us any time of day, right? Like, and every day I can have experiences, maybe not like that, but if I'm present in the moment, I can see opportunities placed in front of me on a regular basis. As to where when I was drinking, I was never in the present moment. It's literally the only place I didn't want to be. That's what alcoholism, addiction, substance abuse disorder, whatever you want to put a label on it. I just don't want to be right here, right now. That's it. Take me out of the moment because in the moment, I'm uncomfortable and I don't know what to do with it. And what makes me feel that way? One of two things for me make me all twisted up inside. Either I am thinking about things that have already happened that I can no longer change, but I
Right.
wish I could. I really wish I could. There's so many things that just twisted up in my head that, oh, I wish that didn't happen. Oh man, I could have done, if that didn't happen, I wouldn't be this way, blah, 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 blah. Or I'm thinking about the a billion things, miles down the road, and I'm making 1,000 scenarios of what could happen. And now I'm twisted up in that. So what's my solution? Just take me out of this moment because I can't handle this. I cannot. I need the obsessive thinking to stop. I
Yeah.
need the noise in my head to
Mhm.
just stop. That's
Yeah.
all I'm looking for, and with recovery and sobriety, what I have found is that once I know and I'm aware that these thoughts, this obsessive thinking, this noise in my head, I need to remove when that happens, I need to firmly believe and I have to know that with the options that are in front of me, that there is no option for drinking or using drugs. That
Mm.
cannot be an option. They need to be removed from the table and they can no longer be an option. So I need another solution. I need something else that's going to make me feel okay. And for me, I have found that in participating and making a program of recovery and helping other people does that for me. That is what does it for me, you know.
Yeah, I think community is definitely a huge part in a lot of these stories that I share is community is like so key. Like, cause you have your Instagram. How long have you been like sharing on your Instagram for?
So, yeah, about 3 to 4 years, I think. It was kinda, like, weird, like, my dad had passed away, and I was like,
Yeah,
wanted to go ahead.
sorry. I was gonna ask you about your dad. Where was he in this whole entire process of you getting sober?
Um, Not a part of my life. Like, I had a lot of, I can't speak illy of him because he's no longer here to defend himself, but like I had a lot of animosity growing up towards my dad. There were a lot of things that I drank at because of my dad, and I carried that with me, like it was, when I was a little kid, it seemed like every kid looks at their dad like, Superman or walks on water, and then like, things start to happen, you start to grow up and we butt heads and, it was not always a pretty scene. So I had a lot of anger towards him that I carried with me pretty much until I got sober. And then the process where I'm gonna go and talk with him about it. We kind of set some things at ease. I told him some things that really bothered me um about our relationship. And then for the next, so that was in '08, and then my dad died in 2021. um for many years, it was just kind of like he was there, like he was invited over to the house, for events and stuff, but I didn't have the same kind of relationship with him that I do with my mom, or with his parents. Like my grandmother and grandfather, who I call like mama and papa, which were my dad's parents, they lived up the road from me growing up. And to me, those two people walked on water. They were
My
the most,
grandparents.
I loved them more than anything in the world. Like they were, like I saw them practically every day growing up. Um, my grandfather tried to warn me at a young age. I remember being like 15 years old. I went up to his house to mow his lawn the next day after a family picnic the day before. And my grandfather kind of just, he pulled me aside in the shed and he was just like, "Bub, you need to be careful." And I was like, "What are you talking about?" It was the family picnic, had some beers and stuff. He's like, "Listen to me." He's like, "You can see it in your eyes. You have a drink and you are ready to go." And I was like, Nah, I'm just a kid, man. I'm just having a good time."
Right.
But he knew it. He saw it then. And he saw me struggle. My grandparents both saw me struggle a lot with, my relationships and issues and stuff with drinking. And it was always revolved around drinking. And they got me out of some scrapes here and there. But I'm blessed enough to say that my grandmother got to see me sober for 3 years before she passed away. And my grandfather got to see me sober for almost 7 years,
Oh
before
wow.
he passed away. So they were very happy, that I did. And then my dad, like I said, like we didn't have the closest relationship growing up. And lo and behold, um, he didn't feel well. It was the summer of 2021. I guess he wasn't feeling well. He went to the doctors. They kind of said, "I think you have the flu." Didn't go away. Like 6 weeks later, he's back at the doctor. And I get a phone call that my dad is in the emergency room and they're going to hold him for testing. Thought he was having a heart attack. So at the time, I was the only person in the family because of my business at the time, living in New York. Because of my business, I was the only person that was vaccinated. So I was the only person that could go see him in a hospital. So I went. I sat with this man in the emergency room, and I got there at like 5 o'clock at night, and they didn't bring him up to his room until like 2 in the morning. And I just sat with him. We just talked, bullshitted with him. It was very, very loose and very, very just, I think he was happy that somebody was there with him. So the next day, we get the diagnosis that he has an 8 centimeter mass in his right lung and a 4.5 centimeter mass in his left lung. He has stage 4 cancer.
Oh my gosh.
So lo and behold, the only person that can go to the hospital is me. So after the first couple, I would go there in the morning, I would stay with him, I would leave, I would come back. If I had like events to cater and stuff, like I would take my and he was just happy, like, and we would just sit and watch like whatever he wanted to watch on TV. Didn't really talk a whole lot some of the times, for hours. Just kind of sat, listened to him. Um, and then it was kind of I called my mom and I'm like, "Can you please fucking explain to me why, of all people, it's me that is there with this man every day?" She's like, "God must have something in store." She's like, "I wouldn't question it. Just keep doing what you're doing." And he ended up He went into the hospital the end of September, and after a couple weeks, like then some of the other family members went and got like their they got a booster so they could see him in the hospital. They didn't know how long he was going to be there, and nothing improved. And then after 4 weeks in the hospital, he made the decision that he's like he tried to do the treatment. They couldn't get a port in. It was just a mess. He was getting worse, and he said, "I want to go home." And we set up hospice care and brought him home, and he stayed home for a couple weeks. And then it's crazy to me, and I am truly grateful for the fact that I had the opportunity to be there, and he and I had a lot of talks that got deeper. He said some things that, I was able to say to him like, "Dad, I know." He's like, "I love you." And I'm like, "I know." And and just kind of like I didn't do some things, maybe the best, but what it gave me the understanding, and this is like we hold the ones closest to us to the highest standards. We do. And we give other people far more leeway in things that they do or things when they wrong us than we would those that are closest to us. It's like we hold them at this higher standard. And what I came to the realization of is like when I felt the pains that I did as a kid, I didn't understand. I
Right.
didn't understand that this man, the things that were going on in his life, because I'm a kid, like I don't know why he's the way he is. I think it's me, whatever that may be. But all I know is the man was doing the best that he could at the time with what he knew.
Right.
And that's it. And like once I was able to accept that, things became a lot more clear for me. Our I think we both healed, before he passed. um so that was a good it was good to be able to do that. And if I was drinking, I never would have done that. I would have fucking stayed away from that hospital like the plague. There's no way. I'm like, yep,
Yeah.
send my regards, let them know I'm thinking about them. But instead, I would show up and I'm like, "Hey, what do you feel like?" Because he didn't want to eat, you know, and I would be like, "Yeah, I'm gonna go to KFC." He's like, "Oh, KFC sounds pretty good." I'm like, "You want some?" And he's like, "Yeah." And the doctor was like, "You can give him whatever he's willing to eat." So I would go get him anything he had a feeling of eating. I'm like, "I'll run out and grab it," and he'd eat a little bit of it, and then like, "What are you drinking?" I'm like, "Milkshake." He's like, "What kind?" I'm strawberry. I could go for a strawberry shake. I'm like, "Perfect. You can have this one or I'll go get you your own." You know? So it was nice to just kind of to be able to do that, and I wouldn't have been able to do that if I was drinking. I wouldn't, you know.
Right.
But yeah,
That's it's a good thing that you got that closure though, because then you would have had to live with, I don't
not
know.
knowing,
Yeah.
it's regrets. You know what I mean? Like and that's the things that eat away at us, right? Like so the things that eat away at me are, like I said, the past, things in my past that I regret. I need to come to term with those because here's like we were talking about earlier. It's not the drink and it's not the drugs that are the problem. It's something inside of me. Because as many times, like, listen, during the years of drinking and doing all these things, when shit got really, really bad, I would just like at times like, okay, you know what? It's bad here. I need to go someplace else and move. I did plenty of geographical, changes during my drinking days. And the issue is I always found my people, and lo and behold, the issue is guess who keeps showing up? Me. Has nothing to do with the
Yeah.
alcohol and the drugs. I keep showing up. I haven't dealt with any of the issues. I just keep running away from them, hiding from them, pulling the cover over my heads and pretending they're not happening, but I'm not dealing with anything. And what the recovery process asks of me is alcohol and drugs are a symptom. What's the root cause of why you're drinking and drugging? Why? What are your thoughts and your feelings? Because like my thinking is broken. That's the problem. My disease centers in my mind. My thinking's broken because the way that it works is like, my thoughts are going to, determine the way that I feel. Whatever I'm thinking, I'm going to have feelings based off of those thoughts. And then those feelings are going to create the actions that I take. And the actions that I take create the life that I live. So my thoughts are, my feelings are based on my thoughts, and then my actions are based on my feelings, and then the life that I live is based on the actions I take. So what do I need to do? I need to change my thinker. I need to quiet that noise. And what's going to do that? I need to pull it all apart. I need to lay it all on the table. I think one of the best descriptions, when it comes to doing something like that, every single one of us have this junk drawer in our kitchen. It's the catch-all, right? You got something in your pocket, you don't know where to put it, throw it in the fucking drawer. But the problem is that the drawer gets so full at some point that you can't even open it. Like you're like sticking your hand in to push some stuff down, and then you get it open, and it's like all this stuff, and you don't even know what's in there anymore. Like that was my life. There were so many uncomfortable feelings going on. I couldn't even describe how I was feeling because I didn't even know what I was feeling. I had no idea. All I know is I didn't feel good. I didn't feel right. So if I want to create a new life, if I want to start feeling okay, then I need to take that fucking junk drawer and just dump it out on the table. Lay it all out on the table. And now once it's all laid out, I can pick up every single thing and I can look at it. And I can say, I don't need this anymore. Like I'm never going to
Yeah.
use this again, and I can throw it away. Now there are certain things in that junk drawer that could be useful at some point in the future. It could be, maybe it's a baffle for the toilet. That might come in handy someday, so I'm going to hold on to that. So all of these that junk drawer is nothing but experiences of my life. So I'm going to take a really good look, and I'm going to examine all of these things that occurred to me in my life, and I'm going to discard the ones that no longer serve me, and then I'm going to label the ones that will or could serve me in the future. And now that I've got it all labeled, I can put them back up neatly in a shelf, and then those experiences are going to be what I use to potentially help another human being someday, because I have the experience of that. The person that is suffering from that, hey, that happened to me. I've been through that. And this is what I did. And that's what I did again and again. And it wasn't working. But then I tried this, and this worked. And it's also worked for another person I know. And it worked for this person. So I can use my past experiences are my greatest treasures. My pains are my platform. They are. Like it is those things that have been enabled me to kind of look at and learn from. We as humans, we like to just try to put everything in a fucking two columns, wins and losses. It's either I did it well or I sucked at it. And if I suck at it, I don't want to do it anymore.
Yeah.
And nobody wants to try something new a lot of the times. Why? Because I'm afraid that I'll suck. I don't want to do anything that I suck at, but in order to get good or to get great at something, I'm going to have to suck in the beginning. And then I'm going to need to be able to ask for help and maybe some guidance from somebody that's already mastered this or knows how to do this. And if I ask 5 people, instead of asking 1, let me ask 5. Let me take 5 people that have been highly successful at something. And I guarantee you those 5 people will tell you exactly what they did to do what they're doing. You can do it in business as well. You want to know how to be a millionaire? Ask 5 millionaires how they did it. And they'll tell you, because they know 95% of people will never do what they tell them to do. They won't.
Right?
They just won't
Exactly.
do it because it
Yeah.
seems too difficult. But if I take 5 people and I ask them, that's why you said community is so important. Connection is connection is the opposite of addiction. If I get connected with other people that have walked this path, and I take some guidance and some suggestions, and I know that these feelings that I'm having are normal. These are normal feelings, right? And what did you do to get past that feeling? Well, I did this and I did this and he did that and she did that. And I can start like kind of looking at the things that might apply to my life. And if I apply them, guess what? I don't feel that way anymore. And then now, instead of it being a loss, now when I experience the same thing again, I can look at, instead of always asking why, tell people all the time, stop asking why. Don't ask why this is happening. Don't ask like, why did it happen this way? Start asking how and what, because those are solution based. How did I get myself here? What can I do differently? How did it turn out the last time that I did it that way? Right? What do I need to do differently this time? Because if I take past experiences that felt like a loss and then I learn from that experience, now it's a lesson learned and I can move it over to the win column. So my losses become victories, if I'm willing to change. But
Willing.
I have to be willing to change. And nobody likes change. We're human beings. Change is so uncomfortable. Change is
Mhm.
so uncomfortable. It's so painful. And I think it's the Buddha that says change is not painful. Resistance to change is painful. It's not
Mhm.
changing. It's how much do I want to push against this? And what's holding me back? Most of the time it's either fear or pride. It's either fear telling me you dare not do that, or pride tells me, why the fuck would you want to do that? And I
Yeah.
can pick either one, but I need to be able to get over the fears because everything that it was ever meant for me is on the other side of fear, you know? And it's like they say, just do it in the face of fear, right? If you don't want to do it and you're a little scared, why are you scared? Well, I'm not good enough. I'm not fast enough. I'm not smart enough. It's never going to work out. You're never going to know unless you try. I would
Right.
rather fail at something because I tried and gave it my all than have the regret of never knowing.
Yeah. Sorry, so many things just went through my head. It's like with my coaching, I was like, it's terrifying to me. But if I'm helping one person through it, maybe I'm not everybody's cup of tea. Like at least like I'm helping one person. Like it's scary because people, look up to you and but I also have my kids looking up to me. I don't want to fail them. Like, I don't know, like, change is so hard, and pride really does get in the way, and I can see that in a lot of close people to me, and they just wanna stay stagnant, and because they don't know anything else, but now we're the bad people because we changed.
That is a very good point that you bring up there, right? And I think that it's one of the scariest things because, like, um, I think the scariest thing for me when I was like thinking about getting sober, right? And like when I was actually going to do this, I was gripped with fear because I had no idea who I was going to become. That was the biggest fear I ever had in my life. Like, what now? Who am I going to become? This is all I've ever known. It's a part of everything that I do. So who am I going to become? So that was really, really scary. And I needed to be willing to say, like, hey, let's see what happens. Like, what is possible? Like, we're riddled with like anything is possible, right? Like this anything is possible. Like, and people like get stuck with that, like, well, anything is possible, and what's possible and what not, what is possible and what's not possible is none of my fucking business. It's not my business what's possible and what's not possible. Like that is God's business. That's the universe's business. What is my business is to find a passion and a purpose and seek it.
Yes.
Participate in that process with every fiber of my being and guaranteed, don't know when, don't know how, but if I participate in that process, what's possible and what is meant for me will happen. And that's
Yes.
the key.
Yeah.
Stop chasing the shit that doesn't belong to you. You know, if there is a burning passion, it's like they say, like the passion is for me. My purpose is to share that passion with the world. That's it. And if I
Yeah.
do that, good things happen. It's
Right.
inevitable. It
Yeah.
can't not happen, right? Like it's like your moral obligation to share your purpose with the world. Like
I would
you would be doing a disservice to the world if you didn't share your purpose. It's a God-given
Yeah.
purpose.
Yeah. I was terrified to like, what people would think of, "Well, Megan's not drinking anymore? That's weird." Like, I was so terrified of what people would think if I quit drinking, and here I am. I just realized this probably maybe 2 months ago. I'm the same person.
But better.
Yes. I'm more
Because why?
present, I'm clear, I'm
Okay,
not, like and
you're hitting all the points. And like, as soon as I said, but why? Like, what are the things that make you a better human being today than you were when you were drinking? Like you said, I have more clarity. I'm more of who I am, right? Like I'm more present, not just like with myself, but for my kids, for the people in my life. Like I'm more present. And that's huge. Like my kids were so little. I was just talking to a guy about this last night. Like my kids were so young. It wasn't about the things that I burned to the ground financially at that time because they don't know anything about that at the time. They could care less. What they knew is like what alcohol and drugs robbed from them was my time. That's what it took
Yeah.
from them. It took my time. So when kids are little, like I'm blessed to say that, like granted 10, 7, and turning 5, at least I'm glad I did it when I did. I'm glad I didn't wait any longer. It happened when it had to happen. Um, and I think when I look back in hindsight, because we can only connect the dots going back, like I have to look at all these experiences to put it together to bring me to where I am today, and all of those things had to happen for me to have the life that I have today,
Yeah.
and now I need to ask myself on a daily basis, okay, so what do you do with that? What are you going to do now? Is this it? Is this the end? And you can easily get stuck in that funk, right? It's so easy. And how many people do you know that are that way, right? Like you said, here I am growing, changing. I'm feeling excited. And then you got the people who are like, so it's either grow with me or fall away, right?
Right.
You can grow with me or like and find your tribe. That's what I tell people too. Like I may not vibe with people the same way that I did because we're not I'm not vibrating on the same frequency that I did then. They're
Exactly.
perfectly happy sitting where they are, doing what they're doing. But for me, like to do that, it kind of like it makes me feel like, ugh. And I'm not like, we're not supposed to feel that way. I'm
Right.
not supposed to be hovering at like a 4 or a 5. I should never be lower than like a 7, 8, or a 9, in my frequency. I should be vibing good. Good things happen when I'm like kind of, like look at it this way. You can ask yourself, what energy like what kind of energy do I like to be around? What's the element that I thrive best in? And what environment is best for me? Some people literally thrive more in a very laid back kind of environment. That's their element, right? And their energy, they produce well when everything is calm. Me, I'm like, I need to go. Like I need to be around high energy, like let's do this. That's what helps me thrive. So I need to be around other people that are if I'm around other people with that same kind of energy, I'm more prone to thrive. And it's okay for the people that thrive better at a lower energy. That's great for them, but it's going to bring me down.
Yeah.
Maybe I can bring them up, right? Like maybe I have that ability. Like maybe they're like, "Ooh, I like what this guy has going on," right? We become like magnets to people that want a little bit more of what you have, and they can have it if it's what they want.
If they want it.
If it's what they want, and if they
Like,
don't, that's fine too.
yeah, very well put.
Yeah, no hard feelings, right? It's just not. It's like you said. Like I'm not everybody's cup of tea, and that's okay. I don't need to be anymore. Right? Like I think it's such a key thing knowing who we are and knowing that I don't need to impress everybody. Like I don't need external validation from other people to know that I'm okay. I don't need it anymore. And there were times in my life that I did, right? I need the pat on the back. I need to like I need the like, hey, you're doing so great. And if I didn't get it, now it's like fuck you. I don't like you anymore. If I don't get the validation from you, now I don't like you. All right. Now I have a resentment against you because you didn't give me a pat on the back. And that's like it doesn't need to be that way. I'm not going to be accepted by everybody, and I think one of the greatest things is like what other people think of me, none of my fucking business. It's not my business. It's not my business what they think of me. If I'm doing the right thing and if I'm following my passion and my purpose and I'm living in service of other people, they don't have to like it. And I don't need to know what they think about me because I used to want to know what they thought about me. And if I know what you think about me, well, I'm going to let you know how I think about you. Dude, it's so exhausting,
Oh, yeah.
but it's so exhausting. Like, why do I need to live that way?
I
'cause
just
I
take
gotta
myself
fuck
out of
that.
situations now.
That's nice too.
I
And
just
but okay, let me at like so you just said, so I just take myself out of the situations now. Have you found that like how when did you get sober?
July 10th, 2023.
Okay. So I'm sure that like with some of these situations, you've learned to put up more boundaries in
Oh,
place.
yes, and
Okay.
that's where yeah.
So now the coolest thing in the world are the people that have such a problem with the boundaries that you have now put up for them are the ones that hate them the most. It's bonkers. Like they're the ones
Ding,
that
ding,
need the
ding.
boundaries the most, yet they're the ones that are like, "Oh, I can't believe they're that way." Blah, blah, blah. And as long as I know that going into it, it's easier to like stay with my boundaries.
Yeah.
Cuz people get like people feel like they're, oh, they don't like
Being
me. Oh,
attacked.
yeah. And then they feel like you're putting up boundaries for your own mental and, physical health. Like you're putting up these boundaries because, you know, they're not good people, perhaps, or maybe they just like, suck the energy out of you. So like you're making boundaries and then they lash out because they feel they're being attacked by you. But it's like the people that can't accept the boundaries are the ones that need them the most.
Right. Oh my gosh, this is a whole nother podcast.
Yeah.
Definitely. Oh my gosh. I could totally talk about that forever because like right now, like that is the one thing that I've noticed the most since quitting drinking is once you set those boundaries, some people are not going to like it. And those are the ones that needed the boundaries. And they don't like that you now have a boundary because they could get away with a lot of things when you didn't have boundaries.
Yes. Yes.
They could
And
treat
that's
you
the
how they wanted and not give a flying F. And now you're like, peace out. I don't need you.
I think we should do a episode 2 of and we'll just call it boundaries.
Yes, let's.
Discussing
Yes.
topics of boundaries and how it's affected your life and the situations that you face. Because I think it's a big topic for a lot of people that are trying to get
Yeah.
sober because, we're people pleasers by nature in some ways, right? Prior to getting
True.
sober, like, we want to please other people and stuff. And I'm really good at it, right? Like, I'm really good at making you feel okay and I can fit in with everybody. Yet I'm fitting in with everybody and I'm standing in the middle of a crowd, but I feel completely alone in the middle of this crowd.
Yeah.
Like it's just and for me, I needed to be able to get away from that. And a lot of people I think suffer from the same thing. And like they feel like they're not doing things right because other people are mad at them because they have now put boundaries on their lives. So it's like you said, I think it's a big struggle for a lot of people.
Yeah. No, I definitely think that we should do a follow-up one with a topic for sure.
Is there anything else that I can share with you today? I mean, I could go on forever. I can talk forever when it comes to sobriety and recovery and
Yeah.
and people and like, I love this stuff. Like for me, like I said, find your passion. Your purpose is to share it. And once I started on this journey of like kind of getting into the online space and seeing how many communities out there are actually like people, and it's a movement nowadays. Like it
Mhm.
is a fucking movement. It's grown tremendously just from the time that I started on here. How many people are giving this thing a shot? Right. And not everybody suffers from it the same way that maybe I did or you did. Everybody's got their own reasons for being here. And I think the best thing that we can do is support them in in the best way that we possibly can. You know, it's I think the greatest form of empathy and compassion that we can show another human being is to meet them where they're at.
Yeah.
Not, hey, do this, do this, do this, do this. Just meet them where they're at and then see where it goes from there. You know,
Yeah. I totally agree. Um, I will put your information down in the description so my followers and subscribers can come and find you because you have quite a following on Instagram and you
and it took
put out
and
some
I
good
fell
content.
off a lot. Like when I first started doing this, like I got, heavily involved with it. I was like posting a lot, posting a lot. I was like fired up by it. And then 2024 kind of just there was a lot of stuff going on, like in a personal nature, like just things that needed to be taken care of, like health things and just stuff. And I kind of got away from it. And then I kind of started to say to myself in like December, like my New Year's resolution almost was like, you are going, like, I missed it. Like, I miss the connection. Like, I still have connection in recovery, but I missed it's totally different. The connections I have with people online are completely different than the connections I have with people like in person and stuff. So, and I missed it, like I love, I do. Everybody likes a little pat on the back every once in a while, like, but it's not the pat on the back. It's like literally there's nothing that fills my cup more than somebody, like, either it's a mother or a husband or a wife or just a person in general that reaches out and says, I cannot tell you how much you've helped me.
Yeah.
And it doesn't, and see, the thing, what I have found over the years is like, it's not like you don't see it a lot, like maybe in your comments, because some people don't want to share that, right? But in the DMs and stuff, people do say, like, like, or send you a message and they're just like, you helped me in ways that I can't thank you enough. For me, it's like, whew, that's like God's work,
It
don't.
it's my outer circle of people that end up DMing me and texting me and being like, "You helped me." I mean, I have a community of people that comment all the time, but it's the ones that are, like,
That aren't
scared.
there.
Yeah, that are
They're too
scared.
scared.
Yeah,
Yeah, because they
and I'm
don't
like,
know
"Oh
what's
my
going on yet.
gosh."
Yeah,
Yeah,
I love it.
and it makes me so I'm like, "Little me helped you?" Like, I don't know. Like, it's just it fuels me to keep being here and helping people.
You gotta give it away if you wanna keep it.
Yeah,
The more I give, the more I get, right? Kinda
right.
seems crazy, but the more I give, the more I get. If I go I go deeper within so I can give more, and then I give more and I get more. So
Yeah,
it's like this constant cycle.
exactly. No, I agree. And, like, yes. So, everybody should go follow you that
Thank
watches
you.
this.
And I'm
They
gonna
should
start pushing. I'm pushing. I'm gonna order first. I'm gonna order some of your coffee so that I can speak upon it, like, honestly, and then I'll tell everybody it's the best coffee ever. And I'll let everybody know too. Like, I'm a big supporter of people in the sober community. Um, so anything I can do to help you as well, to help push that and keep that, get that out there to people, just let me know.
I appreciate it. Yeah, because the guy that we, are getting is the guy that we're getting the coffee from, he's actually I don't know if I told you, he's 7 years sober. He has quite
Nice.
the story. I'll have him on my podcast one day too, but, yeah, no,
Nice.
it's an exciting thing, and I know people are like, well, isn't coffee an addiction?" I was like, "Coffee? I mean, coffee's not killing people. Coffee's
Isn't
not
it?
toxic."
Listen, here's my thing. I'm gonna choose my vices, and the ones that aren't killing me or hurting other people, I'm gonna do. Like,
Exactly.
it ain't hurting me and it's not hurting you. So it's, for me, like, there's always gonna be something. But if I check my motives and my intentions, and like it's not hurting other people, and it can be helpful in some way, then it's probably the right thing to do.
Exactly. Exactly. Like, I even like, when I was pregnant, I was like, "I will not give up caffeine. I will give up alcohol, but I will not give up coffee." I would have my whatever it was, 100 to 200 milligrams of caffeine per day, like, that I'm allowed during pregnancy, maybe sometimes a little bit more. But, I mean, I was not giving it up because it was just a way to I don't know, like, I don't know. I liked it. I liked the
I get
taste
it.
of it.
Me too. I love it. I love
I
coffee.
I drink it black. I don't
Me
put
too.
like, a ton of sugar in
Nothing.
it.
No, I don't put anything in it. Like, I drink it black, and like that's like
Yeah,
I love it. I love coffee. I need it every day. That sounds like
exactly.
an addict. Oh God. Oh
Right?
no.
When I was like I get it. But yeah, no, let me know how you like the coffee, and,
I will.
I definitely wanna have you back on so we can talk about a
Awesome.
topic. Like, thanks for sharing your story, and I, like, truly appreciate you giving your time to us, and,
Thank
um,
you.
like, you guys comment below so, I like, sharing your stories are, like I like the comments that come in after they hear other people's stories because it just, it fuels the community, like, "Oh my gosh," like
Yes.
and then a whole entire like, people come running to people, I love it. Like, I won't be able to get to comments for, like, a day or 2, and all of a sudden I go back and I'm like, "Holy crap, this person just had so many cheerleaders." I love
All
it.
good things. Well, Megan, thank you very, very much. And like I said, anybody, any way I can support you, anybody that I can, possibly support, feel free to always reach out to me. If somebody, like, just so people know, if you ever reach out to me in my DMs, like on IG, it will be me. It's not a bot. It's
Yes.
not an assistant. It's me that will answer you back. And if I can't help you with what you have going on, I am more than happy to point you in the direction of someone that I know and that I trust that could potentially help you.
I love that you mentioned I don't have bots either. So I'm like, I'm just one person. It takes me a minute to get to you sometimes, but just because I don't have the capacity to sit there and engage for as long as I want to. So, you are Better Beginning Now on Instagram.
Yep. All one word, better beginning now. I always think that we can make a better beginning, and there's no better time to make a better beginning than right now.
Exactly. I like that. Well, thank you so much, Michael, for being here. I appreciate
Megan,
it.
thank you very much for having me, and I wish you all the best with what you have flourishing in your life. And like I said, anything I can do to be of service, please let me know.